Hello, I'm Andrew, and I want to do something a little different today in this video. I want to look at half a dozen or so key videos on the channel that will try and explain how my interests and ideas have evolved over time between my very first drumming video to my latest video of ambient music in a canal tunnel. So if you're new to the channel, this should give you some sort of idea into what I like doing and why. And if you're familiar with the channel, you'll probably find it interesting anyway. For all the videos we're going to look at, I'll put links in the description below. But let's start with this first video I made. Immediately obvious in this one is that there are two of me. And that was one of the main reasons I had for making it, to have a bit of fun doing that as a technical exercise. It was very straightforward. Record one take, leave the camera where it was, record the other take, and then stitch the two together with a simple crossfade in the middle afterwards. The other reason I had for making it was to celebrate a kind of milestone I had achieved in my drum practice, which was to be able to play patterns in 7 and 5 at the same time. So the electronic drum part there is a pattern in 7 on the hands and 5 on the feet. I've just noticed I'm wearing the same t-shirt, that's very funny. And the acoustic drum part is the other way up. It's a pattern in 5 on the hands and a pattern in 7 on one foot, and then the same pattern on the other foot. For some of the time, the rest of the time it's improvising. The reason I like these mixed timings, apart from showing off that I can do them at all, is that I like that while they're completely structured and formulaic to play, they sound sort of chaotic to the listener. There is a pattern there, but it doesn't groove in the way that a normal common time pattern does. And it sounds like perhaps I'm just hitting stuff at random, and I like that. And I made a few more of these me next to me drumming videos, sometimes playing structured and complicated pieces, sometimes just improvising. But for me, in a way, both approaches can lead to a similar outcome, which is the sound of something unpredictable happening, or that it's happening at random. This next piece is totally improvised, totally freeform. I'm not playing rhythmically on the acoustic kit. And on the electronic drums, I'm going purely for sort of varying clusters of intensity. I've organised the tuning on many of the pads so that whatever I hit is likely to make some sort of harmonic sense. But then I've introduced a pitch sweep on the middle block that covers one semitone less than a full octave, which adds some sort of nice chaos later on. And so there again, these are recurring themes of chaos and perhaps things happening at random and unpredictably. The other element to this piece is the vocal loops. And I'm looping up just a couple of vocal notes and layering them up again so there's no rhythm to it, at least not that you can make out. It's just sort of several of me singing 2 notes. But I love that sort of vocal layering that's a textured loop. So in this next one, I've really gone with that vocal idea, and you're not even watching me play now. I am playing in this one. I play the notes with the attack that you can hear off my electronic drum pad block into a sound module, and I did all sorts of random modulations of that sound as well, but that's another story. I did mean to video myself playing. I set the recorder going, but either I ran out of space on the memory chip or the battery went flat or something. Anyway, the basis of the music in this video is a similar sort of effect with the vocal loops to the last one, but I've done it in a different way. Instead of building up the vocal loops manually using the looper, the only singing I did for this one was to record as many 3 or 4 second samples of me singing all the notes at semitone intervals between the lowest and the highest that I could comfortably make sound good. And having captured those samples, I then wrote some simple software to loop them into long notes that could last, up to 30 seconds, and then apply a slow fade in, and sometime later apply a slow fade out. And then to play those notes at, say, 2 or 3 second intervals, so as to create this vocal layered soundscape programmatically. And the tool that I used to do this I called the samplescaper. It's actually in my GitHub account if you want to go and look at that. Everything about the samplescaper was randomized. The fade-in time was random, say between 2 or 5 seconds. The uptime was random. The fade-out was random. I even selected the note at random within a given scale, which is F sharp minor in this video, and the notes appeared at random points in time. So this vocal layering, it's completely unpredictable, it's totally subject to chance. All of this sort of programmatical, randomized construction of the vocal layering, the sounds that I'm playing through the MIDI unit, and the imagery, it all led to a really nice outcome. Musically, this makes some sort of harmonic sense. Visually, I love it. This is one of my favourite videos, if not my actual favourite video I've made on the channel so far. And so I was quite keen on this samplescaper device, and the next thing I did was to make it not use vocal or musical instrument samples, but to make its own sources using simple synthesizer code. Basically old-fashioned analog synth techniques, square waves, sine waves and so on, modulating them slightly, combining them with each other, a little bit of pitch shifting and so on, all with randomly chosen parameters and settings. So it's like, you imagine an old analog synth where all the knobs have been taken away. And so I took the samplescaper and put it into standalone devices, each with a small computer and amplifier driving their speakers, and I called these the Randomatones. And here they are on my stairs. Actually, the idea was to have several of them spread out over a room, not only to make an evolving chord, but one that had a sort of a spatial variation to it as well. So what you heard changed as you moved about the room. And as another interesting possible spatial variation to the sound, I thought about making them rotate. And I had a couple of ideas about how to do this with motors and wheels and that kind of thing. One idea I had for making them rotate was to make them float on water and to have a propeller that would turn them. And so I set about building something to do that. And I bought this enormous inner tube of a lorry tyre or something to be the kind of raft for the thing to sit on. This was, by the way, this was about October 2020. There was torrential rain, as it happened. And there is, very near the bottom of my road, a subway under a big roundabout. And it flooded at that time, as I discovered when I tried to ride my bike through it. So I quickly went home, put this thing together, carried it down to the subway, and I made a quick video. It was rushed, my camera work was terrible, I waded through this filthy water in just some old jeans and even older trainers. I don't want to go into the making of this a great deal. I did actually do a making of video for this at the time, which I never published. I might dig that up someday. Anyway, this one really did give me the appetite now for making randomatone videos in tunnels or under bridges. A little bit of graffiti. I know a lot of people don't like graffiti, but I really like the way it looks in a Randomatones video. It looks really great on this one from this wide-angle camera, close to the level of the flood water. I felt I was capturing something that people don't ordinarily see. Plus, I really like the acoustic of the enclosed space here. I mean, it doesn't come across well in the audio. I didn't capture it very well because of all the traffic noise overhead, which was a common problem in later Randomatones videos. But I wanted at least to try and capture it in places, if I could. So for the flooded subway, I used that first floating prototype, and I didn't use it again. It was very heavy, it was very hard to take anywhere. I actually just made more fixed versions next, not like the ones on the stairs, but that was sort of constructed to go into the ceiling line of a tunnel or something. And I took these out for a few videos, where again I was interested in the natural reverb and preferably a bit of graffiti, you know, in places that normal people would not describe as nice. I didn't really like the fixed versions. I painted them in bright colours to make them show up a bit easier on video, but making interesting videos out of things that aren't moving is a bit of a challenge after a while. I got much more keen on some spinning versions that I made. And here they are in the absolutely fantastic acoustics of the Woolwich Foot Tunnel. At the time I made this video, which was early January 2022, there was this continuous lift alarm. I'd been down there a few days before and discovered it. You could just imagine other people not being able to work with it because it would spoil their recording. So I made my own little recording of it. I went home, I realised the two alternating notes of the alarm, they were a perfect concert C sharp and G sharp. So I tuned the Randomatones to B major, I went back to the tunnel and did the shoot. It was truly wonderful. I had the most amazing 5 minutes down here listening to these. And because there was no traffic in the tunnel, this was probably the only time I got a good recording of the spinning sound of the units. So by now, I'd had a couple of really sort of formative experiences with the Randomatones. The massive acoustic of the Woolwich Foot Tunnel here, but also the first floating video I made in the flooded subway. The spinning ones were really good. They were heavy, but they were still portable. I could go anywhere on my bike with them, but the format was a little bit limiting. They were small, so they tended to disappear in large spaces, and they had to have something to hang them off. I made quite a few videos with them, but my favourite places were under bridges or in tunnels next to a river or canal or whatever, when really I wanted them in the water, not hanging from railings. So I built a couple of units that could sit in some inflatable swim rings. Those are much easier to carry around than a car tyre in a tube. And I tried them out at the Commercial Road Lock in Limehouse. I got them in the water, and immediately they drifted off to the overflow channel, and then pretty soon after that they nearly blew away completely. They were supposed to be remote controllable, like a little RC boat. I'd put propellers on and made a remote controlled setup over the Wi-Fi, which is not that hard when you've got two onboard computers and a phone in your pocket. But the motors weren't powerful enough, and it was only by complete chance that they drifted towards the towpath and I was able to grab the nearest one. So there were some issues to iron out, but as a first test of the floating Randomatones, it was really good. The tunnel there's hardly really a tunnel, it's just a bridge under the A13, I think it's 20 metres, but even in that enclosed space it was exactly what I wanted to see. I'd have made an even better video if I'd actually remembered to turn the other cameras on. So I made some more of these up until the most recent one, here in the absolutely stunning Newbold Tunnel on the Oxford Canal in Warwickshire. I passed through this tunnel on a canal boat holiday a few summers ago, and I just had to come back here. The setting was fantastic, the sound was fantastic, the motors were working now, although the forward and reverse motor on the blue one is making a pretty nasty noise at this point. It's got sort of seized up a little bit with rust has got inside the motor, I think. I'll probably have to change it at some point. You can see I've mounted some cameras on the connecting rod by this point. They're only cheap action cameras really, they're not very good. And I'd made a mistake here because up until this point I'd had them at the ends of the rod on top of each unit, and they were a lot more stable there. For this one I experimented with moving them into the middle of the rod, but as the units rotated, that wobbled the connecting rod. It's not supposed to happen. I think one was not sitting properly in its float, exactly in the middle. And that rod is pretty flimsy, and the wobble in the middle was made worse by the weight of the cameras, and so most of what you see in the cameras is them just sort of being jogged up and down as the blue and the pink things turned. And I could see that this was going on at the time, and I knew that it wasn't going to make great video, and I was getting a bit sick of the motor noise in the water, which you can't hear so well here. I've sort of tuned it out for the soundtrack of the video. But eventually I turned the motors off, and that was brilliant. They held their position, they'd stayed still, but they were slowly pushed out of the tunnel by the very slight current in the water, slowly drifting out towards the light, singing their ambient song. There was no wobble on the cameras, and for a few moments everything was just perfect. So the next time I make another one of these, I know what I'm going to be doing. That may not be for a while though. Having been to Newbold, I really only want to go in canal tunnels now. I've pretty much run out of decent places in London where I live, at least ones I'm allowed in without a powered boat. And although there are dozens of canal tunnels in the UK, they're nowhere near me. I've made a few videos in the Midlands canals, but those have always sort of piggybacked on some special trip up there for another purpose, like to play the drums. The other issue is that we're into summer now, the waterways get full of boats, and I don't really want them in the way when I'm trying to make a video. There are some more places I can try in London, but in the summer the canals in London get covered in duckweed, which looks terrible, plus that stuff has trailing roots that get caught in the propellers. But we'll see how I get on. I do have some drumming related trips scheduled this year, so I will try and make some more videos then. So there we go. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel, and I'll see you again on the next one, whatever that is. I might do a video about these, the Randomatones. I could do a couple of videos about those. One in just sort of a video of what is in them, and another video in terms of what they do, the sort of the technical ambient music generation and what's involved there. I might do that. I might actually make some more of these, and in which case I could do a video about that. I'm not sort of every nut and bolt, but just the general ingredients, the difference between a new one and an old one, and why I'm making some new ones. So I could do that. I could also dig up that video that I was talking about the making of the first subway tunnel video with the first floating randomatone. That might be interesting. All sorts of things I could do. See you on the next one.